Good morning, everyone. Here's your Mormon News Update for August 15th, 2024. First, today we will start with this story about a missionary. The Post says, "My son's Special Olympics unified partner, Jackson, on the left, died by self-unaliving yesterday. He'd been out on a mission and was struggling with mental health issues, so they sent him home to do a service mission. I just found out about that tonight. Among other things, he volunteered for the Special Olympics. He was the sweetest, gentlest person, and I feel such guilt for not getting to know him better. Maybe we could have helped him, but that effing Mormon guilt is so strong. Who knows? I just learned that he's the oldest of 6, and his little brother is in the MTC. It makes me ill to know that those a-holes will likely do whatever it takes to keep him from going home, where he needs to be right now. I'm so angry. I blame the cult and its insurmountable pressures. He was 19 years old. He didn't even get a chance at life. Rest in peace, dear Jackson." Missionary service in the Mormon Church is rigorous, and it can absolutely be abusive and life-threatening. Here is a passage from a previous mission handbook where it says, "Write to your family each week on preparation day. Limit correspondence with others. Share your spiritual experiences. Never include anything confidential, sensitive, or negative about the areas where you serve." So even if missionaries are struggling, they have been in the past and likely still are encouraged to not say anything about it. It's a recipe for disaster. Now we will go to Portland, Oregon, where there is a Mormon church building for sale in the cultural district of downtown. The owner is listed as the corp of the presiding bishop of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. It's located at 1025 Southwest Market Street and is listed at a cool $4.6 million. It's a 10,000 square foot building built in 1969. It boasts 43 parking stalls and 17,000 square feet of land. I do hope it comes with the Minerva Tykert paintings and the Relief Society table complete with lace tablecloth and the Christus statue. It does beg the question, why in heaven's name would the corp be selling a meeting house? Which leads us to this email that some members received. Brothers and sisters, we are reaching out to parents of young men and young women to remind you of the opportunity all youth, freshman to senior, have to attend seminary. Students can take classes during the regular scheduled school periods as well as early morning seminary if desired. Currently, enrollment is down about 40 students compared to what seminary generally expects. If your child isn't signed up for seminary, we invite you to discuss seminary options with your son or daughter. We truly feel seminary is inspired of Jesus Christ and will be a blessing to our youth in their high school years. Reach out if you have any questions on how to enroll. By the time I was a teenager, my family lived in Utah, so I had the luxury of release time seminary. My own child, though, the one that went to seminary, had to do early morning, and it was brutal. Luckily, we left the church when she was in high school, and so she stopped attending. Now let's go to Southeast Idaho. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints continues to grow in Franklin County, which is a small area in Southeast Idaho right on the Utah border. In June, the church organized its 4th stake within the boundaries of Franklin County. The new stake, Preston, Idaho East Stake, was created largely from wards in the Preston, Idaho North Stake and the Franklin Stake. Michael Romney, whose wife is Nicole, has been called to preside over the new Preston, Idaho East Stake, with Nathan Hess, whose wife is Cindy, as his first counselor, and David Larson, whose wife is Christine, as his second counselor. Other stake leaders are Tyler Moser as stake clerk, Andy May as executive secretary, Tina Fryer as Relief Society president, Grant Conrad as young men's president, Jenna Von Benedict as young women's president, Haley Hamblin as primary president, Tom Madsen as Sunday school president, and Sam Smith as patriarch. The stake's high councilmen, which when I was in the church, we joked and called them the dry councilmen because the cliche was that they gave the most boring and dry talks, are Steve Baldwin, Lance Bryce, Chad Cole, Grant Conrad, Tim Golightly, Randy Henry, Cliff Keller, Tom Madsen, Rusty Smith, Keith Vaughn, and Bart Wilcox. Well, that's a familiar last name. Stakes are comprised of several wards, each of which have between 300 and 500 members. Ideally, there are 8 wards per stake, but that varies, said President Romney, who was a counselor to President Ron Smelly of the North Stake when the division was made. Smaller stakes provide greater opportunities for more people to serve. So is the area growing, or did they just make the stakes smaller so that they would have more stakes? And appear to be growing. With the formation of the new East Stake, a Preston, Idaho coordinating council was created to support the 4 stakes in Franklin County: the Lewiston, Utah stake, the Benson, Utah stake, and the Richmond stake. The area is growing enough that another stake could be formed in the future, said President Romney. And although areas with 4 stakes can be considered for a new temple, it is no guarantee that one will be built there, said President Dransfield. Okay, so is that why they did a 4th stake? So then they could justify putting a temple there? This is also curious. President Darren Dransfield of the Franklin stake said the current size of each stake now is nice because people who did not have callings are now being called to serve. President Dransfield said he could see the Lord's hand in how the boundaries of 3 existing stakes were adjusted to create the East Stake. So it doesn't actually sound like the area is growing in leaps and bounds. What it sounds like is they just divided everything up differently. The stakes are smaller, and then more people get opportunities to serve because if someone's serving in a calling, they are possibly less likely to leave the church. Now on to an update that I received from a listener who went to the temple yesterday. They said it was 1 hour and 6 minutes. I stopped my watch while we were dressing and when we switched rooms. They basically took out all the "let us go down, we will go down, let us return and report" crap during the creation. Waste of time. Full of old people in their 60s to 80s, the officiating couple was probably in their 40s and looked like they didn't want to be there. So once again confirmed the temple ceremony has been shortened and it looks like they took out bits of the script that were repetitive. And now let's talk about an interesting job opening on Indeed.com. The title, Construction Superintendent LDS Temple, Confidential, in Utah. The job description, we are a commercial general contractor and we are currently seeking to fill a superintendent job position in the United States. We specialize in doing work for the LDS Church and other commercial entities. Candidate must have at least 5 years of experience as a commercial superintendent. Because of our clientele whom we work for, a high standard is placed on all our employees. Our employees must dress appropriately without any offensive language or images. Absolutely no alcohol or smoking on the job sites. Some local or regional statewide travel may apply. Pay depends on experience, but in the range of $110,000 a year to $140,000 a year. The job requirements: a high school diploma or GED required. Preferred minimum of 5 years of experience managing multi-million-dollar projects. Must be knowledgeable in Microsoft Word, Excel, Outlook, and the Internet. Excellent verbal and written communication skills required. A professional appearance and telephone manner is essential. Preferred to have a temple recommend. The job type is full-time. There's a list of benefits, and then at the bottom it says, this job has a lot of applicants. You might be less likely to hear back. And last up today, an article from the Salt Lake Tribune. A new court filing makes clear that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is treating a class action lawsuit over tithing as a multi-pronged attack on religious freedoms. I am going to attempt to read through this article without showing too much of the anger that I am feeling. In arguments unveiled Friday, church lawyers are arguing U.S. District Judge Robert Shelby in Salt Lake City to put any court-sanctioned evidentiary probes in the newly formed case on hold until he can rule on an upcoming motion to throw out the fraud allegations. In moving to block the process known as discovery, the Utah-based Faith's attorneys are promising to mount a formidable challenge in September, outlining how core lines of argument in the high-profile case jeopardize the U.S. Constitution's legal shields against intrusions into matters of religious belief. This is anything but a garden variety consumer class action based on misrepresentations about a product or service, the church lawyers told Shelby, instead calling the suit a sprawling class action against a worldwide religious organization filed by a handful of dissenters. Labeling the plaintiffs as non-believers, the church is also challenging their legal standing to represent millions of active Latter-day Saints in a class action over the sacred practice. How can plaintiffs who do not share that faith adequately represent those who believe, church lawyers write, adding that they offer no reason why millions of faithful tithe-paying church members would want any part in plaintiffs' attack on the church. Noting that all but one of the 9 who have sued the faith since October are apparently no longer even church members, the new filing continues. They offer no rationale for how persons who lack faith in the doctrine of tithing as taught by the church can adequately represent millions of persons who have faith on a matter that itself is deeply rooted in faith. And because they do not and cannot adequately represent the members of the proposed class, the brief states their lawyers should not be allowed to start evidentiary discovery that conflicts with the interests of the class. Counter-arguments from the plaintiffs' lawyers are expected to be filed in a few weeks. 9 plaintiffs in 5 states are suing the global church and its investment arm, Ensign Peak Advisors, alleging that senior church leaders and their money managers lied for decades about using member tithing donations solely for charitable causes, while instead investing the cash in a multi-billion-dollar slush fund. The multiple federal cases pressed by former or disaffected Latter-day Saints in Utah, Illinois, Washington, Tennessee, and California were rolled into one action last month and placed in Shelby's Salt Lake City courtroom, mere blocks from the church's worldwide headquarters. The class action case accuses Ensign Peak and the church of fraud, unjust enrichment, and breaching fiduciary duties. In the newly consolidated complaint, the plaintiffs seek the return of varying amounts in individual donations they gave, ranging from $3,700 to $183,256, along with other remedies including possible creation of a national class of plaintiffs with similar interests. In addition to refunds, the class action suit calls for declaring the church's financial practices illegal and ordering a halt to tithing altogether while accountants sort through the faith's finances or the court appoints a special monitor. In several court venues and public statements until now, church officials and their lawyers have firmly denied that top leaders ever misled members on tithing. Faithful Latter-day Saints donate 10% of their incomes to the church. Last week's church filing, its first major move in the class action case, also paints an intriguing picture of how its lawyers plan to fight it. The new motion notes that the lawsuit takes direct aim at questions that are fundamentally matters of belief, including faith in the act of tithing itself, church attorneys argue, based on deeply personal religious experiences developed over a lifetime. That puts probing the lawsuit's main allegations squarely off limits to a class action, the lawyers contend, under the First Amendment's protections of church autonomy, which preempt government intrusion. Allowing it to proceed, they proclaim, risks second-guessing decisions made by duly appointed ecclesiastical leaders regarding the church's mission, its prophesied future, the priorities and timing of its spending and programs, and the amount of funds needed currently versus the future to fulfill the church's destiny and how to invest reserve funds. The assertions of disenchanted members about how the church accomplishes its mission, the attorneys write, implicate precisely the kind of internal church conflict the First Amendment prohibits courts from adjudicating. Those same arguments also apply to the process of discovery, argue the faith's lawyers, who at one point cite a previous ruling that says courts should refrain from trolling through a person's or institution's religious beliefs. The lawyers argue that Shelby should at least put discovery on hold and decide the merits of the underlying case at the earliest possible stage of litigation to fully protect the church's autonomy and rights to free exercise of religion. A roadmap for the litigation issued by Shelby in July calls for the church to seek dismissal of the lawsuit in early September, followed by a response from the plaintiffs in mid-November. Church attorneys have labeled the suits that went into this latest class action case copycats stemming from a separate legal battle brought more than 3 years ago by prominent Utah and one-time church member James Huntsman. The wealthy film distributor also accuses top Latter-day Saint leaders of misleading the faithful over how tithing donations were spent. A son of the late industrialist philanthropist John Huntsman Sr. and brother to former Utah Governor John Huntsman Jr., James Huntsman seeks the return of $5 million in tithing, plus penalties and interest, but is not pursuing class action status. The 17.2 million member church and its legal supporters are also mounting religious liberty arguments in that case, saying that it risks trampling religious protections. The issue is being closely followed nationally for its implications on religious autonomy, as well as its potential impact on a range of nonprofits relying on donations. Huntsman's case has focused on the church spending $1.4 billion on its commercial venture with City Creek Center in downtown Salt Lake City and statements made by then-President Gordon B. Hinckley. It is now pending before the California-based 9th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals. New oral arguments in Huntsman's case are scheduled in late September. L. Ron Hubbard, the founder of Scientology, would be so proud. He is quoted as saying, "You don't get rich writing science fiction. If you want to get rich, you start a religion." And the Mormon Church is showing why. Because you can defraud your members and get away with it under religious protections. You can also possibly go into small communities and defy zoning laws, also citing religious protections. And that's your update for today, folks. I absolutely hope you have the day that you deserve.